This is Vanessa Fabiano. She is a writer based in Madrid and is organizing a monthly lecture series that is currently put on hold called Madrid Bookie that we'll talk about later. But yeah, maybe Vanessa, you can just talk a little bit about like where you are and what your living situation is for context.
Yeah, so I'm in Spain, in Madrid, in the capital, and I am right now. I'm in our apartment. So I'm in my apartment with my daughter, who is 10 years old, and we've been alone here in lockdown since it started in March, because my husband is away. He left shortly before the lockdown started and went to Norway for work, and then he got stuck there when borders closed. So we've been separate.
He's a doctor, right?
Among other things, he's a doctor. Yes. He's also run some companies, but the work he does in Norway is, on the medical front line.
And then, so you're kind of, I mean, I know that he travels a lot for work, but you're kind of now like taking on the solo parent role. And how has that been kind of as a change for like this kind of stressful period? All of a sudden you're like a single parent.
Well, I'm usually a single parent in Madrid. I mean, not all the time. Obviously, he's around. So it's been unusual to be alone with my daughter for this long. But more than anything, it's just the fact that they're at home 24/7. I mean, that's a challenge. And in the beginning, also the homeschooling wasn't in place, right? I mean, the schools, at least here in Spain, don't have a lot of experience with distance learning.
How are you kind of finding ways to like soften the blow of like, because in Spain, you guys aren't even allowed really to go out at all. Like,
no, in Spain, it's been a total lockdown. So I think it's one of the most stringent in the world. I think China had a similar one, but we really, from the beginning, it was no going out except for emergencies and food shopping. And in the beginning, I wasn't even allowed to take my daughter along for the shopping. Kids were not allowed to go out. So, now at least I'm allowed to take her out since I'm sort of single parenting. But how do I cope? I put on headphones.
like,
I just shut out.
Or like, do you guys like have certain times for things, or like we've done like workout classes together, but are there other things like that where you kind of break up the day for her other than just classes? And
her day is during the week is structured. So she starts at 9 and she finishes at 3, and pretty much she has calls in between and homework. So I don't have to, of course there are interruptions, but she's got something to do in principle. And then we do workouts. We try to maybe do popcorns and watch a movie, go in Google Arts and visit some museums somewhere,
cool.
Things like that. Yeah.
What museums have you visited?
Oh, I've been to Moscow to the Tretyakov Gallery.
That
was pretty amazing. And then we visited the Taj Mahal.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And
that.
we went to Met as well.
What's at the Taj Mahal? For some reason, I thought it was a palace, not a museum.
It is a palace. It is not a museum. It is a palace, but it does the job. It keeps her entertained.
And you can go into the different rooms and.
In the museums, yes, you can actually sort of surf through the museums. So, and then you can get close-ups of the paintings. So it's a really nice way to explore stuff. And then they also have places you can visit, like the Taj Mahal or.
So what do you see at the Taj Mahal? I'm so curious.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, I've seen it. I've been to India and I've seen the Taj Mahal, but she hasn't.
Okay, well, I'll have to go online and look at it. It's just like a bunch of rooms decorated.
No, the Taj Mahal is this marble palace, so it's just white, and inside it's white as well, and it's the tomb for the wife of a I guess a Raj, it's called, the emperor in India.
Okay. And so like while she's kind of doing her work a day, like you're trying to be productive, like you have your small business, and then you're also writing a manuscript and working on essays.
My what?
Say what?
My what business?
Um,
Oh, business. Yeah.
you have your business and then your manuscript.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Like,
right now,
how is that navigating the working from home? I like the quote that it's like, you're not just working from home, you're working at home during a pandemic. So it's not like just the easy breezy freelance, like with no crazy extra world energy happening. You're like kind of managing all these other anxieties while trying to be productive and parent and
yeah, I mean, it's so I have different occupations, so it depends a bit. I mean, right now the business, we run an artisanal ice pop shop in Denmark, but right now we'd be traveling there to have meetings, pitch retailers, so that's on hold. So I'm not really active except for some emails back and forth. And then the Madrid Bookie, the literary event series we run, we basically had to postpone all the events that we'd lined up, which we had some really, really good ones, including our first Spanish bookie. And so that's on hold, but we are trying to do a few things online. So,
that's great.
watch our Madrid Bookie channel. We'll have something going on here.
Yeah, what is
outside. I'm not sure.
happening over there?
They're screaming. I'm not sure what's
Is it like a protest of some kind?
No, that can't be a protest because
People aren't allowed out.
you're not allowed to congregate.
That hasn't stopped the Americans who really want a haircut.
Well, but here you're not.
Protests?
I mean, if you go out here, you're fined. If you were caught doing, and there's military patrolling.
No, I know. I'm kind of joking because Americans are also supposed to be quarantining, but there's like all these people like angry that their golf season is canceled and that they're not going to get their haircut.
But you can go out. Do you get fined if you go out?
I think in some places you will, yeah.
So here it's a state of alarm. Sort of,
it's more a higher level of
state of alarm.
So what's the fine that you get if you go out?
I don't actually know. I think a couple of €100 maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to like your writing and your Madrid Bookie, like how's it going? You've been kind of productive, like I've been talking to you. It seems like you've been able to channel the juices to work on your manuscript.
Yeah, I mean, I did. I was actually supposed to be at a residency in March, and then that fell through, not because of the coronavirus. So when they sort of announced there would be a lockdown, and I realized I can't escape to Denmark. It's too late. Borders are closing. So I decided, okay, well, this is kind of like an enforced residency, and what do writers do? I mean, we kind of look for quarantines almost, right? That's why we go to residencies, lock away the world. So I decided that I would just set myself the goal of finishing the second draft. And, I just, the way I do it, I mean, apart from the headphones, I just figure I have to work with the interruptions. I mean, as a mom, you can almost never work interruption free. Yeah. And Joyce Carol Oates says, interruptions are your biggest enemy as a writer, but there's no way around them. So somehow you have to make it work. That means maybe you have to be less perfectionist, or just roll with the punches, or just figure I'll fix it later. I mean, today I got interrupted like I think 7 times in the same sentence.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I don't know that sentence if it makes any sense at the end, but
sure.
That's
what your editor is for.
Huh?
That's what your editor is for.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Although these days you have to kind of deliver an almost perfect manuscript, even if you have an editor. And, I always like to think, I'm a ballet fan, right? And I don't know if you're familiar with Balanchine. He's, the founder of New York
Yeah.
City Ballet. And he was Russian, right? I mean, born in Tsarist Russia. And he's like the Woody Allen of ballet. He created like 400 of them. And
Oh,
if you
wow.
think about life, it was completely nomadic, and it's and full of interruptions. And we're
Right.
talking huge interruptions, like the Russian Revolution, the
Yeah.
Civil War, then the World War I, World War II. And he just went on producing, and he would like choreograph on everything. I think he even choreographed for elephants at one point when he arrived in New York,
Oh,
for the
wow.
circus. So he was like, I just think of him when I have sort of a day where I feel, oh, I can't do it, or
When
like
things
having
are
no
so
money and
easy.
uncertainty. And
Oh,
he was really clever. He would integrate some of the stuff. Like, for example, he wouldn't have enough dancers, so he would just choreograph with that, or someone arrived late, so he would keep that in the ballet, someone arriving late.
oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, he would just work with it. So I figure, that's a good role model.
Oh, absolutely. I never would have thought of him as someone to like look to, but
Oh, completely.
that's really
He
cool.
he was just insanely productive. It's funny because I was thinking about your question, why, that I was sort of productive, and I guess other people you talk to maybe are struggling
It's a
being
mixed
productive.
bag, honestly, but I think it's especially impressive considering you're single parenting right now. So, yeah.
I was wondering if maybe it had to do with the fact that I already lived through an epidemic. So, the SARS one in China when I was living there,
Oh, wow.
in Beijing and Shanghai. So I was wondering, maybe, it's not as overwhelming because I've seen the world kind of shut down from one day to the next before, or maybe it wasn't one day to the next, but it's an
How was,
experience. Yeah.
well, how was that compared to what you're experiencing now? Because from the outside, Spain seems like one of the scariest places you could be. So, like, while Americans are freaking out a little bit and like having tantrums about not being able to like go like out with each other on benches, like Spain is like, martial law shutting down, but you seem relaxed, which so it kind of makes sense that you've already been through this. So I'm curious how it compares.
It was very different in the sense that I was an expatriate in China. I didn't have a family or a daughter at the time. So also there wasn't the shutdown in China. Really, what shut down was mostly Beijing. Beijing had, I think, martial law at some point. I had already left Beijing then. They locked down the country, so nobody could come in or get out. And I decided to stay. I had a chance to go to get out, but I decided to stay. And actually, I moved to Shanghai during that time. And
Yeah.
Shanghai didn't have any martial law or something, but at some point, the Chinese stayed away. So the city was empty, pretty much like Madrid is now. And you'd be able to just, without a problem, go from one end to the city to the other, which was impossible just weeks before because it's clogged with traffic. So it was a very, very unusual sight of this 16 million people city, empty.
Right.
But it was different also because the infection rate wasn't as high. It was more lethal, but the infection rate was lower. So you didn't have this, people were wearing masks and things like that, but there were many who were just walking around normally without, protecting themselves.
One of
And
the most kind of notable things about all of this seems to be like the underlying anxiety that I think has come out of the fact that we don't have tests and you don't like know enough about the disease yet. And I imagine that was the case for SARS as well. Like, do you remember that same kind of hysteria around like all these unknown factors?
well, the thing with SARS was that the Chinese government at first didn't say anything. So it wasn't, like we heard it from people in the West through emails.
Oh.
Suddenly we got, I mean, it started, I think the first infections happened in November in the South, Guangzhou. And then sometime in February, I think, we got the first emails from the West saying, you've got some kind of virus that's killing people in China. And so we were, you know, it was very difficult to get information because there was no information inside China.
Oh, wow.
At least not that I could get my hands on or anybody I knew. And when you talked, the weirdest thing was when you talked to your Chinese friends or colleagues, they wouldn't know anything about it and they would not believe you. I mean, many I talked to just wouldn't believe me. And so that was very different, right? So there was sort of an anxiety about what's happening, first of all, because you couldn't get, you know, now we're getting briefings, this many infections, this many deaths.
Yeah.
But for several months, you didn't have that. It was very, very opaque.
So how did you navigate that? How did you stay calm and navigate that? Like, was it just enough to get news from your friends on the outside, or did you rely on neighbors more than, you know, you kind of, like, I don't know if you already knew your neighbors or...
No, I was at the time I was at first at a sort of, before I started working, I was at on a campus, language university, and there we had sort of, we could sort of exchange information with other foreign students. But then lots of that closed down. Then when Beijing closed down, I moved to Shanghai, and there, I mean, you know, then you started actually getting information from the Chinese government when they started sort of saying, okay, wash your hands, do this and that. And you were advised to not go out and the hospital, not go to the hospitals. But there wasn't this sense of, like in Shanghai, there weren't that many deaths. So there wasn't that sense of the hospitals are overwhelmed and, you know, you can't get treatment. Like, what worries me the most here in Madrid is not actually Madrid. It's my parents who are in northern Italy and have been locked down since February. And if, you know, they're 80 plus, if something happens to them, or at least there were a few weeks where if something happened to them, they would not get treatment. So that's a very different worry. At the time I was single, alone. I mean, it wasn't, I had to take care of myself and that was about it.
Yeah. And were you wearing masks, and like, did they have like the science around hand washing and...
No, I wasn't wearing a mask. You know, I was a bit reckless sometimes. Yeah, I know. So I was very lucky. But again, the infection rate was much lower. There was more concern because the death rate was higher, but the infection rate was much, much lower. I mean, it wasn't like here where, you know, you have to 2 meter distance and...
Yeah. And how long did it kind of take once things settled down to like bounce back from that? Just thinking about like how we all...
China, you mean?
Yeah, where you were. I don't know how long you were in Shanghai, but afterwards, but how did people react once things kind of calmed down?
Yeah, I remember it as happening rather fast, but maybe it's also because in Shanghai it wasn't so bad. So by July, I think life was back to normal. The SARS virus died out basically. I remember in August my parents came to visit, so by that time it was, but also SARS was so localized, right? I mean, there were a few cases internationally, but it was mainly China, Asia, some other Asian countries, whereas this COVID has spread so massively and so fast. I mean,
I know I did kind of wonder about that because I remember reading about SARS and the swine flu and thinking like, oh, that sounds really terrible, but then never feeling like worried that was going to come to the US. And I think COVID somehow, you know, I blame astrology, but COVID has somehow like made its way, you know, to every nook and cranny of the world in a way that is unprecedented, which is
Totally. And I actually also, I think because of the SARS experience, I was pretty calm too. I was like, yeah, it won't sort of
Yeah.
spread. And that definitely wasn't the case. But you know, I mean, Spain, Italy didn't know. Italy, it happened so fast. But Spain was watching Italy and didn't take action. I think Spain had several thousand cases already by the time it announced that it would shut down Madrid, not even the country, Madrid.
Wow.
Whereas Denmark, for example, I think they shut down before they even had any deaths and maybe 400 infections.
Okay.
And you can see that these countries, they're starting to reopen, and they have already reopened schools.
But not borders, as you were saying.
Sorry?
But not borders, meaning like as a country they're opening back up, but
no.
they're keeping the lockdown.
Well, they have opened now to foreign spouses, because I wasn't actually able to travel to Denmark, even though I have a Danish child and I'm married to a Dane. I wasn't able to enter Denmark because I'm a foreign spouse. So that changed today. Today they announced.
We talked yesterday, and you were saying you might have to drive like 4 days to get there.
Well, I probably will have to anyway, because the flights are impossible. But at least I know I can get in. Which is kind of
you just need to find someone with a private jet and then just have them take you.
Sure.
Anybody have
no
a
problem
that they want to let?
No problem. Put a little ad here at the window.
Yeah.
Anybody have a private
jet? Are you like finding any other inspiration, like reading any books or?
You know, I'm reading a lot of stuff that's kind of related to some extent to the novel. I'm reading Darkness at Noon by Arthur Koestler, and what was I reading? I'm reading a book about genes, genome, but that's just sort of to keep my sort of general knowledge sort of going. But also sometimes when you read something that's completely separate from what you're working on, it can sort of spark really interesting associations that you would never have come up with. So I like to also read something that's utterly not related to what I'm writing.
What are you writing about? Can you give an elevator pitch about your book?
Oh man, it's early days, so I don't have an elevator pitch. I can tell you that I like to work with like comp titles in my head. I did that for my first novel, and that comes pretty natural to me. So in this case, I would say it's like the movie White Nights, which is kind of this defection drama with Mikhail Baryshnikov, famous dancer. That's one sort of reference. And then the other reference is this Soviet novel, The Master and Margarita, which I don't know if you've read.
Mm-mm.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. And it's about the devil coming to visit Moscow in the 1930s. He's coming as in the guise of a professor with his entourage, which includes a talking cat. And he proceeds to like turn everything, the entire city upside down, and expose sort of the hypocrisy of really Soviet society. So it's a bit, it combines those, so it's White Nights meets Master Margarita, and basically it combines two of my huge interests, which is ballet, hello, and war. So, yeah.
Yeah, your books tend to be kind of, or like the one that I read, it's like kind of an action adventure book. Like
literary, suspense, family epic,
mm-hmm.
and also coming of age. It's kind of mashed into one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What's your connection to Russia? I feel like it seems to be kind of a theme that you're really drawn to that culture.
No, actually, that's not, I did study Russian at one point. And I spent like a month or so in Russia in the 90s, early 90s, when I think just right after the putsch happened. You know, it was like 89, the walls fell, and then 91 was when Yeltsin was deposed or kicked out. I don't remember, but it was around that time. I was in Russia for a month, so I'm familiar with Russia, and I have, you know, read a lot about it. But it wasn't. It's more that I got really interested. I got intrigued in this Cold War era and ballet during the Cold War, because ballet was basically used as a political weapon. I mean, it was used to, the Soviets used it to demonstrate like cultural superiority, right? And this sort of tug of war with the West, especially with the Americans. So they would do these.
So interesting.
Yeah, and
Well,
the dancers were like these cogs in this propaganda machine. But at the same time, they were also kind of hugely regarded in Russia. They were like gods. So I like this sort of tension between you're a god and at the same time you're a cog in this political machine that humiliates you at every opportunity.
oh, really?
And in some cases that tension led to, yeah. And in some cases that led to defection, and in others not. And that was another question I found interesting. Why do some people leave and others don't?
Would Baryshnikov be included in the people who were defected?
He defected, yeah.
Oh, wow.
He defected, and then he made a movie about defection. Yeah, he did. He's actually one of the most famous defectors.
Yeah, I mean,
he built
everybody knows him as Carrie's boyfriend in season 6 of Sex and the City.
Oh, that's true. He was in Sex and the City.
I forget what his character's name is, because it's like hard not to see him as him.
It's some kind of Russian artist he plays, I think.
Yeah, he's basically like a joke. Yeah.
I didn't think his acting was hugely convincing there. I think he's done better acting.
Cool. Yeah. Huh? He's just so cool. Like his whole role is like, be cool.
Any talent, but he's not really very good at interviews. I have watched some interviews with him, and he's I don't know what the deal is. I think he wants to say too much, or maybe he's nervous. Yeah. He's a great dancer though, amazing.
Yeah. Well, and the whole thing with Balanchine, right, is that all of a sudden the dancers were asked to do things that were like way more athletic than previous. Wasn't that kind of one of the things that made him stand out?
Yeah, I mean, Balanchine just loved New York and America, and then he just accelerated. He sped up ballet. So, you know, the Balanchine dancers usually are like 10 times faster than sort of regular ballet or, you know, other ballet companies. So yeah, it's pretty tough on a lot of dancers when they have to do a Balanchine ballet, because it's not just the speed. There's also different way of landing, or different way of, he does very crossed dégagés. It's difficult, but it's very crossed. The positions are very crossed, which is really hard to do. Yeah. He does very large fourth position. So it's a certain style, the Balanchine style. And if you haven't been trained in it, it's difficult to adjust.
Yeah.
But the speed is definitely amazing. And then he did some story ballets later, but he kind of did a lot of these plotless ballets, right? Where you focus just on the dance.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, did you watch him? Did you go to the New York City Ballet?
You know,
have you seen some?
I didn't, just because it's a little cost prohibitive to go to the ballet in New York, and just in the US in general, it's very pricey. And at the time I was like on a very low budget. But I used to go to the ballet. Say that again?
I used to go on $10 tickets. Did they stop?
I wasn't that motivated.
No, I don't.
I don't have the same passion for ballet as you.
No, no, I used to sneak in all the time.
Oh, really? That's great.
Oh, yeah, when I was living there.
To switch gears a little bit, have you been doing any like COVID cooking, or have any like little like mealtime like rituals or recipes that you've been developing?
No, I'm not that into cooking. I have this 5-ingredient, what's his name? Jamie Oliver, the cook? Yeah. So I have his 5-ingredient book, and I basically go by that. But my daughter, she's cooking up a storm.
Oh.
Bakes up restaurant. Yeah.
I
So
ate at
she's been
10,
pretty,
so that's impressive.
yeah, she loves to cook and bake, and so she's just been really busy with that, and she's really independent, so in a lot of ways that's taken quite a load off me, that she loves to do her own food.
Yeah.
So no, cooking isn't sort of, I appreciate eating a lot, but I'm not that into
Making
preparing
big
food.
fancy meals.
No.
Fair
No,
enough.
you are, you've got
No.
your okay.
I
Well,
mean, I'm on residency, so you always kind of, I feel like, have to make do on residency because, like, maybe you don't have a pan, or like we don't have a vegetable peeler, or you don't have this or that. So it kind of,
true.
you have to be a little bit more flexible about the kind of things that you make. And like for
But you
some
have good
reason, say that?
restaurants. Do you have restaurants, good food there, cafes?
Yeah, and you know, when pre-COVID, I was going a lot to downtown where there's a lot of really good restaurants. But since then, I've been trying to self-quarantine and not go out. And I think there are some still open, but a lot of them are doing like to go only. I just saw that the ramen place is open and they're actually providing meals to people who like are needing food. So that's kind of great.
Okay, that's good. Yeah,
Uh,
you can order food here. So we do also do these sort of once or twice a week. We order and have a little
oh, that's great. Yeah,
delivery
it's good to
party.
support the small businesses as much as possible. Like I went and got
Exactly.
coffee this morning and like bought some fresh bread from them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, do you want to talk about Madrid Bookie at all? Like why you got it? Like why did you decide to start something like that, and kind of how you met the other founders? Um,
Yeah.
that
Love
might be
to.
interesting to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's pretty recent actually. Well, not recent. I mean, we started talking about the idea beginning of last year. Early 2019. I have a friend here, Andreas. We sometimes write together, and he actually runs a festival in the UK in Margate, the Margate Bookie, and
What is it called? Margate?
Margate Bookie, and it turned into pretty. You know, he started in a warehouse, and then it turned into this 3-day festival with loads of events, authors coming, and so we were chatting here, and we thought there weren't a lot of English language literary events in Madrid. So we basically decided, okay, let's try to launch not a festival but sort of a monthly thing, and we met Gedre, our other partner, who joined the team, and we basically started the first event in September with a Nigerian writer, Namdi, and then a poet, Spencer Rees, a US poet. And from there, it's been really an incredible experience. We've had amazing feedback. I think also because it takes place in a really special venue, and we limit the attendance for now to sort of 40, max 50 people. So it has a very intimate feel, and it's like more of a literary salon.
What's the
And very
venue?
the venue is actually, we collaborate with the space next door, which is sort of, it's actually a private apartment which is hosts events and exhibitions and things like that. So
Called
it's
Space Next Door.
the space next door, it's called, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's a lovely place, a bit bohemian, just feels very special when you walk in, and it's really been a very nice place to hold these events, and the authors love it too. At least that's the feedback we got. It's because it's intimate, it's small scale or smaller scale. Yeah.
And how do you put together your roster? You've had some really great people from like all over the world. Um, yeah.
Yeah, well, we reach out to people. We try to, some are local, of course, they live in Madrid. Some are on their way through Madrid. So we just reach out to people when we see they're in Europe or they might be in Spain. And we ask if they'd be willing to come and, do a bookie with us. And we've been just very, very lucky having authors who were very willing to come and love the idea. And yeah, so far we haven't really had anybody say no thanks. It's just been really encouraging.
Yeah.
Hopefully it continues like that. But we had, I mean, yeah, we had lots of events already lined up. So we'll have a full fall schedule if we're allowed to resume offline meetings.
Yeah. Are you looking, so what are, you said there was going to be some online events. Are there any coming up?
We actually have one coming up where Ruth Testapetis, who was supposed to be in March at the event, she's a YA author, American-Lithuanian, who just wrote a book about Spain, specifically the Franco era in Spain. It's called The Fountains of Silence. And she is, we collected some questions from readers online on our Instagram, and she's answering those questions on video. And then we're looking at a few other things, but it's a bit early to announce. We'll probably have maybe a chat with some authors and perhaps a workshop, but we still have to finalize those.
So in other words, follow your Instagram and or mailing list to get notified about upcoming events.
Madrid. Yes.
Okay, we'll include that in the post.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. Or our Twitter.
Oh, okay. The tweeters?
Twitter.
Tweeters? Is it called tweeters.com?
Tweeters. Tweet.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I will stop recording and then we can talk. Bye.